Thank you for joining us tonight for a NewsNation special report, the Murdaugh Mysteries. Alec Murdaugh is charged in the deaths of his wife and son, but Paul and Maggie's murders are just part of this complicated story. Many point to another case that opened up Pandora's box into Alec Murdaugh and his influence. February 24th, 2019, more than 2 years before Maggie and Paul were killed, the day a teenager with an ever-present smile tragically lost her life. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton joins us tonight live from Walterboro, South Carolina, where the trial will take place, with that part of the story. Brian.
Yeah, Marnie, we're outside the Colleton County Courthouse. It's interesting being here and thinking about the fact that the Murdaughs pretty much controlled this courthouse behind me for generations, and now tomorrow Alec Murdaugh will be here for his murder trial. They have had so much power over this community, and it is really highlighted when you go back and you look at what happened with Alec Murdaugh's son Paul when he was arrested in a deadly boat accident, but never even spent one night behind bars.
There's 6 of us and 1 is missing. What, Molly? She's in the water.
Can you see her?
Carnage and chaos.
Okay.
19-year-old Mallory Beach missing after a night on the boat with friends. The recent high school graduate jettisoned from her boyfriend's arms when a 17-foot center console plowed into a piling in Beaufort County, South Carolina.
Tide, wind is always a factor.
More than a dozen first responders and an army of volunteers searched for a week.
Bring in the air assets to help us look in the areas that the boats can't get into.
Prayer chains to find Mallory alive turned to an unbearable wave of grief.
Miss your voice, miss your smile, everything about you worth the while.
The store where she worked and modeled clothing posting a public tribute, but privately, the Murdaugh machine was at work.
A lot of influence across the board. Nothing really happens unless the Murdaugh family says it happens.
It was the Murdaugh's boat, the family's youngest son Paul parking it at a gas pump. He was at the helm, or was he? Friend Connor Cook on board as well that night, and his attorney says it was not long before Alec Murdaugh was telling all 5 survivors to stay quiet on who was captain. What was clear immediately, though, alcohol was in copious use by the underage boaters. The police report saying all were grossly intoxicated, yet no one's blood alcohol levels were checked at the scene.
Same thing if everybody's standing around a car, you don't know who drove it. It's not against the law to be standing around a car intoxicated.
But Mallory's boyfriend, Anthony Cook, is said to have told authorities immediately that Paul Murdaugh was the captain. And Paul left a trail of photos about town, parked at the pump, not for gas. His friends say he used his big brother Buster's ID to buy beer and malted drinks at the store. The 20-year-old raising his purchases triumphantly before they're loaded into his pickup truck. Later, after drinking with parents present at an oyster roast, the group continued boating to dodge known DUI roadside checkpoints. Docking near a bar called Luther's, where Paul and Connor do more drinking. Back in the boat, one friend testifying Paul was belligerently drunk, slapping his girlfriend, spitting in her face, refusing to give up the wheel until the deadly crash.
Please send someone.
No, I'm coming. We're calling, okay?
The Murdaugh family served nearly a century consecutively as the area's solicitor, meaning they prosecuted cases, putting them in close working relationships with officers, deputies, state agents on the case, and others.
They always put on a get-together every year for first responders, police officers, things of that nature.
His family has been powerful and at the center of power and influence there for almost 100 years.
Therefore, I'm going to set a personal recognizance bond.
It would take nearly 2 months for Paul Murdaugh to be criminally charged, eyebrows raised with his release that same day with a $50,000 bond and surrender of his passport.
Anything to say about that, about why he decided to plead not guilty?
Because he's not guilty.
His former friend Connor cleared at last.
Connor was left to twist in the breeze for nearly 2 months.
Next, the crash bringing an ongoing bevy of civil suits from Mallory's mom, Anthony Connor, and the other young women demanding Alec Murdaugh's financials, the beginning of the unraveling of a low-country Southern dynasty.
So we have to put a spotlight on things like this because it cannot continue.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.